Hey guys, so just jumping back into things. In the first video, I did kind of talk about just looking at where I've been, where I am now, and where I'm going, my work experience, skills, strategies, and techniques. Looking at Aaron Beck's cognitive behavior therapy and how I pretty much use that and the idea of SMART objectives and understanding the difference between goals and objectives in my work with students at Crossroads. And what I was kind of going to next, before I got cut off, was the other way I was able to kind of use these skills and strategies here at UNCW to be more specific. And also, because it was more recent in terms of when we actually learned them. So looking at my time with the admissions office, or the Office of Undergraduate Admissions, and my opportunity to be able to work with incoming freshman students, current students, and even transfer students, looking at their idea for what they wanted out of their college journey. And then also trying to help them kind of get through different things along their academic time here, whether it was deciding classes, not choosing classes on a whim, and even outside of admissions, talking to students and mentoring different students on the idea of making smart decisions and smart choices and not allowing their surroundings or their irrational thoughts to impact their behaviors and leading them pretty much down dark paths. So definitely in Crossroads and definitely in admissions, but then more importantly, just working with students here in general, or even with some of my classmates. And I think something that I've also realized that is really important for myself as a student, but then more importantly also as a professional, is the idea of not only how I use my preferred skills and techniques, but how I respond to when others are using theirs on myself. So, just the idea of receiving advice and information and knowledge, because I know, ultimately it's going to help me become a better student and a better professional. So, understanding that I can't just go around and preach all of this stuff to different people. I have to also be a follower of the advice or the message or the strategies that I'm trying to implement. So understanding that, I need to also keep in mind CBT myself, knowing that there are different times where I let my thoughts impact my emotions and my behaviors. And just understanding that I need to understand that even more and have a good grasp of it as far as when I'm working with other people. So kind of moving on, when I look at the interest column of my Facebook page for class, I really talked about, my overview of helping, and, I really consider it my why. So, more simply put, why are we doing this, or why do we want to do this? And I know you two always ask, why do we want to help, or what made us decide to be in this position or this profession. And I think one thing that I was able to also say in my interview at Wake Forest was that ultimately I just want to help people. I really get a kick and enjoy and a high off of helping people, or knowing that I made an impact in someone's life. And, I feel like sometimes, we may try to spice things up in our response to that question of why we do what we do. But I think it really just boils down to the idea of, just wanting to help people or change lives. And I know we talked about it in class, the reasons or things in my life that have essentially made me want to pursue this field, and also this profession. And a lot of it really started, as a child and as a student, from my mentors and my parents. And I think Becca hit up on it a lot stronger, and I really didn't consider it that way, was, how we pretty much learned the idea of helping at a young age. Especially, I feel like for myself, being an older sibling, I was always told and reminded to help my brother or support my brother. And then, when you're constantly taught one thing at home, as a teacher, I used to feel like you're just going to mirror that when you go other places. which kind of made me feel like why certain students' behavior was one way or the other, but that's a completely different conversation for another time. But yeah, ultimately just wanting to help people. This idea of paying it forward, it being done to me or someone helping me or supporting me, then I feel like it's my duty and my responsibility to give that same help and support to someone else. And I've tried to do it in many different capacities, or settings, such as, mentoring or volunteering, and then teaching. And then now in the higher ed program, working at Crossroads, or, mentoring other underclassmen on college choices and even career decisions moving forward. And then now ultimately wanting to touch even more lives on the mental health side of things, because I do feel like mental health is becoming more and more serious. And I feel like awareness in higher education is definitely needed in regards to mental health. So that is what's leading me to mental health counseling. And, I just feel like on that stage, I'll be able to impact even more lives on a bigger setting, inside the College Counseling Center and outside of it. And then I also put, the saying that my father kind of taught me, that, I think some people rephrase it in different ways, but he used to say, you save a life, you can save the world. Or if you can touch one life, then you can ultimately touch the world. And, really what that saying is, and I know Amy and Becca talk about it a lot too, especially with giving us advice, especially being realistic in what we're trying to do, or the goals and objectives that we have in the profession that we're going into, being realistic and not trying to save the world. I know I used to think that as a first year teacher, and I used to go back and preach it to second and third year teachers now, but they're absolutely right. You can't save the world, but you can touch one life, or you can save one life. And then with this idea of paying it forward, or that, it's like a ripple effect. You throw a rock into a pond and then you just see a bunch of ripples everywhere. It's just like touching one person. You never know what that person can then go on to do. Or can go on to touch someone else or impact someone else's life in a positive way. And then one of the last things I mentioned was ultimately being an advocate for change. And I know we talk about a lot of things, and we talked about it a lot more in our last class meeting as far as, UNCW specifically, and the changes and opinions that we have on what could be better, or what could be handled more efficiently. But I feel like that is also, one of my missions and goals in the field of counseling, is being this advocate for change, or this advocate for helping. More so on the side of mental health, race, equality, inclusion, just being an advocate for the profession, and being an advocate especially for Black men and African American males that are trying to get into the profession or are trying to pursue higher education. Just finding a way to not only help people through touching their lives or counseling them, but just being an advocate for positive change in society. And, that is my overview of helping from my perspective as a future professional going into the field, and especially from what I've learned from you two, which I feel like are great therapists, and great teachers of the profession. And, I feel like I've learned a lot from the both of you through this time. But one of the main things also that I think, as far as going into my why, is kind of like you all do for us, just being able to pass on the knowledge to someone else, especially those that may be trying to get into a profession. Because I feel like, once I pretty much told Becca and Amy that I was planning on going into counseling, they literally just kind of took me up under their wing to kind of get some experience and gain knowledge. And, they try to push me to the psychology side of things, but they kind of let me do my own thing at the same time. But, they were able to kind of take me under their wing and help me kind of learn from their experiences and their challenges, and their situations where they've overcome and their achievements, and just understanding that another reason why I'm pursuing this field or pursuing higher education is because I do feel like that the experiences we all encounter through our professions or through our experiences, we can take something from those experiences and help someone else, so that hopefully they either may not have to experience those things or that they may have the opportunity to experience those things. Looking at both sides of the coin. So, wanting to help people, being an advocate for change, but then also wanting to pass knowledge, and pass experiences that I've learned from and grown from, on to the next person or next man or woman that's going into the field or going into higher ed and student affairs. And then, last but not least, kind of looking at my status update, which is pretty much just my personal view of my professional view, how I want people to view me in the profession. And when I thought about this, I kind of reflected back on my time teaching, because I feel like I was asked this as a new teacher also, like, how do you want your teammates, or how do you want the other teachers that you may encounter to view you? And a lot of times I wanted it to be the same way my students view me, or the same way my students receive me. So I think now, going into counseling or even in higher education, it's the same. I feel like I have the same philosophy or mindset, and it's that I want other individuals in the profession to view me the same through my relationship with my clients. So, and I listed pretty much things that I wanted to be considered, in my client relationship that I also want to carry over to the professional relationship. So being open and honest, ultimately knowing that some things you may not want to hear, but at the same time, we're ultimately doing this so we all can grow. And I feel like we've all heard that from time to time. And it's just understanding that sometimes people are giving you something as far as constructive criticism to pretty much help you grow in your job or in that task. So understanding that I'm going to be open and honest, no matter the situation, just because I want everyone to be better, or I want things to be better. Also, I want to be seen as approachable. I want people to know that they can come and talk to me about anything. I feel like if we are counselors and therapists or, student affairs professionals, we have to be approachable, because you're ultimately working with people. And no matter the context, your job is to work with people. So I feel like that should almost be a requirement, even though some people aren't as approachable as others. I feel like it should be a requirement to a certain extent. And then empathetic, I feel like, the number one skill that is needed in counseling and therapy, or in working with students or working with people in general, is the skill of empathy. I feel like you have to have empathy in order to be able to effectively help people, because I feel like through empathy is the only way we can truly, recognize or understand their situation. And I think, we talked about it here, in our classes, but they also talked about it a lot in my, interview at Wake Forest, is that, empathy may not allow us to understand that person's situation, but it will be able to help us relate. So finding a situation where we can understand that person's feelings. So, for example, students that may have experienced a death in the family, we may not know, depending on who they lost. For example, I had a student that lost their mother. And I had to tell them that, I do not understand what you're going through, because I haven't lost my mother, but at the same time, I know what losing a loved one feels like. So understanding empathy, showing them that you can be relatable to their situation and you can kind of see things through their eyes and through their feelings. Respectful, team player, trustworthy, genuine. I feel like all of those things are something that is needed in any profession, but definitely genuine above all things. You want people to know that you are being your true self to them, because I feel like that opens the door to all these other different attributes to you being an effective professional in whatever field you're in. So, I feel like I've definitely enjoyed this course. I'm glad Becca told me to take it because she said it would be more hands-on and we get a lot deeper. And I'm really glad of really happy for everything that I was able to take from this program and through you two ladies. And I will never forget it as we move on and as I move on to Wake.